Hello, everybody, and welcome to Big Talk Tuesday. Today we have D.A. Roberts on, and D.A. has his own talk show about Sasquatch and everything cryptid. So let's welcome D.A. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is D.A. Roberts. I'm born and raised here in the Midwest. I grew up on a farm north of Lebanon, Missouri, and living out in the woods. You get interested in all things nature. And when I first saw the original documentaries like The In Searchos with Leonard Nimoy, and of course the Patterson-Gimlin footage, I grew up in the '70s. There wasn't anything to do on the farm besides do your chores and run around in the woods. So I was immediately hooked, and I wanted to know more about it. And I've just had a passion for it ever since. But as an adult, I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and did almost 20 years in law enforcement before I had to medically retire. But those skills I've learned along the lines is what I apply to my Bigfoot research and other cryptids as well. I'm also the Region 2 director of the North American Dogman Project, which covers the Midwest area. So I'm really into the phenomenon, and I enjoy researching it. I've been doing, like I said, I've been researching for decades. Absolutely love the subject. I'm also an author. I write primarily fiction, but I've got several series that are cryptid fiction. And what I do is I use the research that I've done as well as eyewitness accounts to create the behaviors of the creatures in the books. So the behaviors are as real as I can make them. While they are fiction, they are based largely in reality. And I've got 26 of those in print. You can find all of my stuff at daroberts.net. And you can also check out my podcast, which is called DA Ex Machina, and it airs Wednesdays and Saturdays on YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook as well.
Yep, I've watched your shows, and they're one of my favorite, and I can't wait to read a couple of your books. I didn't know that you. Well, I heard you talking about a book that was coming soon, but I didn't know you already had some books made already. So that's awesome.
I've got 26 in print.
Wow, gosh. Yeah, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I know you've had a couple of encounters, whether you've seen Sasquatch or not. We would love to hear about those.
Sure. The first time I had something happen, I was still pretty young. I was in a deer stand on my uncle's land, and he owned, well, before he passed away, he owned about 180 acres, and it was right up against 5,000 acres of conservation land. So there was nobody around but us. And he was pretty adamant about not letting anybody but family hunt on his land. So if there was anybody out there, he'd have ran them off. So I was out on my deer stand about, it was probably 3:30 in the morning, maybe 4 o'clock. I was waiting for the sun to come up. I got out there early and was sitting in the stand, and I was kind of nodding. And I hear somebody walking up behind me, and I can tell by the gait that it's two legs. And I thought at first it was my uncle. But now I'm like, no, that sounds way too heavy. And it was getting close to the tree. And I'm like, is there anybody else back here? It's not supposed to be anybody on this land. And I was pretty far into the woods. I mean, it would have been really random for somebody to find me in the dark in those thick woods, because the woods of Missouri are pretty thick. But I couldn't hear anybody talking. There was no sign that it was anybody I knew. But if it had been my uncle, he knew I was sitting up there with a rifle. He'd have been like, hey, I'm back here. Don't be shooting me. And whoever it was, all I could hear was the leaves crunching. And as they started getting pretty close, I'm getting a little nervous. And I was in a pretty wide tree. I was about 15 feet off the ground, 10 to 15 feet, somewhere in that ballpark. And I went, hey, who's back there? And it stopped, just went completely dead. And then I heard it make this weird sound, like a deep breath, like, and then it turned and walked away. And by the time I could scramble out of the tree and get down, because I couldn't lean out and look around, it was too wide. By the time I got to the ground and got back there, got my flashlight out, it was gone. I mean, I could see impressions where something had been walking, but it was completely gone. So there's no way that was a person, because if if it'd been my uncle, he'd have been like, hey, I'm back here. You know, I know you're sitting up there with a gun. Don't shoot me. And if it'd been somebody who was poaching and I called out to them, they probably would have, oh, I'm sorry, you know,
Yep.
because again, you've got a guy with a loaded rifle just around the corner of that tree, you know, and Uncle Buddy was pretty adamant. He was, you know, he was very protective of his land. So there was nothing out. No, there shouldn't have been anybody out there. And the closest neighbor was maybe 2 miles away. So they would really had to have trekked through the woods to randomly find me in a deer stand in the middle of the woods when it's not
Yep.
even daylight. And so I told my uncle about it when I got back to the house, and he's like, yeah, I don't think that was anybody. But then
Mm.
my uncle years earlier, he was full blood Cherokee. He married my Aunt Violet. And everybody just called him Buddy. He was my Uncle Buddy. And when I was still pretty young, I was about 8. I'd been asking all my siblings and cousins and everybody who would listen to tell me if they had a Bigfoot encounter, because I was that kid. You know, when I found out about it, I wanted to know everything I could. And of course, all my relatives are like, I can, you know, just, you know, go play. There's no such thing as Bigfoot, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one day I was at my uncle's house, and like I said, he lived way out in the middle of nowhere, about 7 or 8 miles from the nearest town, which is called Eldridge. And Eldridge, Missouri, is not exactly a town, as you can understand. It's what we refer to as a poke and plumb town. You poke your head out the window and you plumb through it. It's a little bitty town, but
Yeah.
and that was the closest town that he lived to. And he picked me up, put me in his lap, and he said, Douglas, I'm going to tell you something. That's my actual first name. I go by DA as a writer. He says, I'm going to tell you something. He says, and I want you to remember this. I'm like, okay. And he was not the kind of guy who, you know, spun yarns, or very serious minded guy. Worked hard his whole life, didn't drink, was a Marine sniper in Korea, and just an all around awesome guy. But he says, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to remember that. I said, yeah. He says, the things you're asking about, these Bigfoot creatures, they're real, and I've seen them on this land, and you need to be careful. I'm like, okay. And that, to me, that just cemented it in my head. And when I told him what had approached me in the deer stand, he's like, yeah, I'll tell you what that was. He said, you've got to be careful out there, because they don't always have your best interests at heart. You need to be careful. The next deer season on that same land, I moved my deer stand to another section of the property, and it was, again, pretty deep in the woods. And I was setting up in the deer stand, and I'd been hunting for a little while and just waiting. And I finally got movement. I'd seen a couple of small does, and I wanted a buck. I wanted a good sized buck. And sure enough, after waiting for a while, this one walks out, and I had to have been at least 12 points. He was big, and I was excited. I'm like, oh, I got him. And I was hunting with a British 303 rifle, an Enfield 303 with a soft tip. So I knew if I got him in the right spot, he wasn't going far. So I very slowly bring it up, thumb the safety off, and bang, I get him right in the sweet spot. He goes down instantly. By the time I get out of the tree and start heading over there, he has kind of popped up and jumped, you know, headed off. So I know every deer I've ever shot, I've had to track for some distance or another.
Mm-hmm.
But I get over to where he went down the first time, and there's quite a bit of blood where he went down, and what we refer to as lung butter, which is lung tissue. So I knew I'd got him good. I'm like, he's not going far. So I start following the blood trail, and it's not like little drops. It's like big chunky drops of blood. So I know he's not going to get I'm not going to chase him 2 miles. I'm going to find him very soon. Well, I get to a ravine, which is where an old dry creek bed was at, and it was about a 20-foot drop, and he had went straight off that side. And I'm like, well, I'll break a leg if I jump down in here. I'm going to find a lower spot where I can get down there. So I had to follow this creek bed for about a quarter mile down, where it was low enough where I could just shimmy down. By the time I got back to the spot where he had dropped, I found the spot in leaf litter and sticks and stuff where he had dropped, and there was a significant quantity of blood. And I knew he'd bled out, but he was gone. So I'm spiraling out. I can't find another blood drop or anything. And at the time in the 80s, there hadn't been a mountain lion sighting in Missouri in God knows how long, decades. Same thing. There hasn't been a wolf sighting in Missouri in probably 100 years. Wolves have just they pretty much eradicated them as soon as they started farming the Missouri Valley. Uh, and black bears were reintroduced in the late 2000s. So there were no black bears at the time. And I've seen plenty of coyote attacks. Coyotes, when they attack something, they don't find tufts of fur, pieces of skin, a hoof. They just destroy it. And there was none of that. It was just completely gone. No, and it was rocky in this creek bed, and I couldn't find a track. I couldn't find a blood drop. So I had a Motorola radio, and I called my uncle. I'm like, "Hey, I think somebody's out here. My deer's gone." And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I shot it. I tracked it. I found where it bled out, but it's gone. There's not a sign of it." He said, "Where are you at?" And I told him what part of the land I was on. He goes, "I told you not to go into that section of land. You shouldn't be out there." I said, "Well, I've been tracking the deer." He said, there's nobody out there but you. And I said, "Well, somebody's out here. They took my deer." He said, "Doug, I'm going to tell you, no person took your deer. Get the hell out of there." And so I went back to the house, and he explained to me, he said, "I think something took your deer and you don't want to go back in there to try to get it." And so I didn't see it, but there's nothing else it could have been. There was no
absolutely
in the area. Coyotes would have destroyed it. It wasn't dragged off by a raccoon. I mean, there was nothing big enough out there other than possibly a person that could have carried it off. And I don't know if you've ever tried to throw a full grown buck over your shoulder and carry it. It'd take a bigger guy than me. Yeah, every deer I've ever got that size, I had to drag.
Yeah, so I know that where you're at, deer are probably a little bit smaller than where I'm at in Idaho. No human being could pick up a deer here. But
I would guess he was probably in the 200-pound range. I mean, I probably could have picked him up, but I couldn't have carried him far.
Yeah. The cool part about, even though you didn't see anything, is I have heard countless encounters just like that, where people get their kill, whatever the animal may be, and something has taken it, even if it's a 500-pound elk.
Yeah.
So that's, I keep hearing myself in your
I think it
thing.
my computer cutting in and out.
Okay.
I've been having sound issues with my computer.
Yeah, dang it. I know that happens a lot. Also, with your first encounter about when you were in the deer stand, I had a very, very similar experience.
What happened?
So we were out hunting, we were deer hunting, and we were here in Idaho. And is everything okay?
Yeah, I think there's a short in my audio jack. I think that's what's causing it.
Okay, dang it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So we were here in Idaho, and you know those big huge briar patches?
Yeah.
We were hiding inside one of those, waiting for a herd of deer to come down. And instead of a deer came something bipedal that was extremely heavy. So I never got to see it, but it came right behind us, stopped. I could hear it smelling the air deeply, like it knew damn well we were there. And then it quietly walked off. But when it was walking to us, it was like shaking the ground with every step. So yeah, that's creepy. Yep. Yes, it does. And when you grow up in the wilderness, you definitely know the difference between a quadruped and a bipedal thing. So that's really neat.
I apologize for my computer issues. I'm having something really weird going on with my audio settings.
Yeah, what does it sound like on your side?
You sound fine, but for some reason it keeps trying to randomly alternate between my headset and my speakers, and that's why it suddenly gets that echo.
Oh,
I don't
oh,
know.
yep.
I don't know what it's doing. I can't figure it out. It's got to be a short in the audio jack or something along those lines.
I wonder, sorry, I wonder if, does it keep switching? Sometimes they switch to your headphones, back to the computer.
Bumping back and forth.
Dang it.
Are you picking up an echo now?
Nope, not now.
Well, it's set up on the speakers, on my speakers, so I'm just going to unplug the headphones so it'll quit switching.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Okay. I had to turn the speakers down so it's not picking up on my microphone, but I've got you talking, going through the speakers, and hopefully
Gotcha.
it quits switching. I apologize.
Okay. No, that's fine. Technology is hard to get right every time.
I agree.
So I know that you've also had a dogman encounter, and I know it's not Bigfoot related, but I would sure love to hear about that.
Well, are you familiar with the incident with the lamb in the Land Between the Lakes?
Yes.
Okay. Um, Basically, for anybody that might not be familiar with it, it was an incident in 1982 where allegedly a family of 4 was killed by a dog. And LBL is one of those areas that just has a rich history of sightings of these types of creatures. And in the southern part of LBL, there are Bigfoot sightings. And allegedly the two don't mix well together. LBL is a really creepy area. It's a national park, public use area, right on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. It's a massive area. And there's been sightings and people gone missing and lots of weird activity in that park. So I've been reading about the place and researching it for a while, and I decided last year I was going to go. So in July of last year, we loaded up and went to LBL, and I went into the actual park to do some research. And I was met there by Nick Valente, another guy from the North American Dogman Project. He lives in New Jersey, and he drove down, and the two of us went into the park together, and day, night, didn't matter. We were all over the place. We were looking for that original campground where the alleged incident in 1982 had taken place, but they have bulldozed that area off, so we couldn't find it. So we were using a map of the area and driving all the back roads, and there's a lot of camping in LBL, but it's all very primitive. There are no like RV hookups and things like that, so it's not as popular a camping destination as as a lot of places, because you can't just go in and hook up your RV and have power and AC and all that. You've got to either have your own generator or not mind camping rough. So what we did is we got a map of the area, and we started driving all these little gravel roads all over the place, trying to get into the back recesses of the park. And we found some places that were off the beaten path, and we found there's one campsite called DeMumbers Bay, and it's very remote. And when we were driving the road from DeMumbers Bay, we were driving down a section that it was narrow. 2 cars could pass, but you kind of got to get off toward the grass. But we're driving this section, and I had my cell phone out with my video app up to record if I saw anything. And I don't know why I didn't just have it running and go back and edit out all the useless stuff. I don't know why I didn't do that, but I didn't even think of it. I just thought, oh, I'll have it here and I'll just hit the button. And we're doing 4 or 5 miles an hour. We're just creeping down this road. And I was looking off to the right, and you think you see something, but you're not sure. Well, I kind of glanced and saw something, and it panned back, and then it hit me. And I looked back, and it was like a shadow under the canopy of the trees. It was broad daylight. And I realized I was looking at something that had its hand up on a tree, and it was like up close to the tree, and it was watching us. And that when I locked eyes on it and it realized I was looking directly at it, I'm like hitting Nick. I'm like, stop, there it is. And so Nick slams on the brakes, and as it's turning to run, Nick finally sees it. I got to look at it for about 10 to 12 seconds. Nick saw it for 3 or 4. When it realized I was looking at it, it spun, and in like 3, maybe 4 loping, kind of like bounding steps, it hit a ravine and was gone. Leaf litter was pretty thick, so by the time we got out to the tree where it was at, all you could see was impressions in the leaves. You
Wow.
couldn't find any tracks. And we measured the spot where the tree where it was at, and where its hand was at was probably 7.5 feet off the ground, and it was kind of leaning like this with its head about the same level of its hand. It was completely black, no other color on it whatsoever.
Mm.
Looked like the kind of like, well, if I had to pick a movie description, think of the werewolf on Van Helsing. It was kind of like that, but not that muscular. It was built more lean. And,
Okay.
it was just gone. And Nick's like, "You think we can make it down that ravine?" I'm like, "Not without rappelling equipment." So we decided not to pursue it. But I got a good solid look at it for, like I said, 10 to 12 seconds, enough to realize what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Nick got a really good look at it too, but he didn't see it as long as I did. And the funny thing is when I saw it, not once did I think of my phone. It
Nope.
wasn't until after it was completely gone that I thought I should have been recording that.
That's funny because so the leaps and bounds that you're talking about is like a bounding jog or something.
Mhm.
And when I had my Sasquatch encounter, that's how the Sasquatch ran, was just like that. And it covered 50 to 60-foot area in 4 steps, 4 bounds, I guess.
Mhm.
So I can see that. And I can see how they would easily be missed when they're that dark,
Yeah.
you know?
I think what really gave it away is as we were creeping by in the truck. And Nick's got a Hummer H3, but as we were creeping by, it was like slowly turning its head, watching us, and it was that movement.
Yeah.
I saw the ears kind of shift positions. That's what zeroed me in.
Wow.
So
Wow.
same thing with deer hunting. Every deer I've ever gotten, it was the motion that gave it away. And when they were stock still, they're hard to find.
Wow. That's crazy. Oh, that would be scary.
It was
Ugh.
one of those like holy crap moments. I mean,
Yes.
it was intense.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Sure.
And another thing I wanted to ask you, you doing your own show, so far, you said you've been doing it for a year
About a year
and
and a
some,
half.
okay. Out of that year and a half, what have you heard that's been the most profound or shocking to you that you've learned?
Well, we've had some really good, solid people on. We had Ron Moorhead that recorded the Sierra sounds, and listening to Ron talk and hearing those Sierra sounds, that was kind of a defining moment. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there was they had the cryptolinguist from the Navy test those Sierra sounds, and he said, well, one, there are elements of a language here. He says, and two, when they analyzed the audio tracks, there were pitches and peaks and valleys on this audio track that were both above and below human speech level. So there was no way a human made those sounds. So to me, that was one of the most compelling things. And another really good one was when we had Jesus Payan on, and he has captured some amazing pictures. You can find him over at Breaking Bigfoot. Jesus Payan is an actor. He's been in Breaking Bad, Walking Dead. He's been at a couple episodes of Longmire. I mean, he's a kind of a well-known name, but he's really into the cryptid field. And his channel Breaking Bigfoot on YouTube has got some really good stuff.
He's a very sweet man too, and I really, really, really enjoyed that episode you did with him.
We're gonna have him back. I mean, he's got more stuff.
Good.
But man, like the last, like you said, when we were talking earlier, when last time we had him on, he had to leave early, but we're definitely gonna have him back soon.
I can't wait for that one. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, no problem.
I don't think I have any more questions. I think you did a great job of of telling us your experiences, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, happy to do it.
Okay. And I will actually be on your show sometime in the future too. So I can share this video with you
Okay.
on your site so people can know a little more about you.
Mhm.
And I'm sure people that I'll show this video to would love to come and check out your show and your books
Awesome.
and your web pages. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
So cool. All right. Thank you, DA.
Anytime. Happy to do it.
Okay.